Rosalind Carter had lived in Elmwood Crest her entire life. She remembered when the main street had just one traffic light and the local diner offered only 2 flavors of pie. Over the years, the town had grown charmingly without losing its warmth. Colorful flower boxes adorned the windows of every shop, and a medieval-style clock tower in the square chimed daily at noon. Rosalind's Julia boutique, tucked neatly between a bakery and a used bookstore, fit the town's quaint character perfectly. She specialized in crafting custom pieces for weddings, anniversaries, and special local events, sourcing the finest gems from around the world. Her workshop sat behind a display room filled with glistening pendants, rings, and earrings. On any given day, she could be found bent over her wooden workbench, magnifying note perched on her nose, setting emeralds or sapphires into delicate silver or gold. She loved how each piece told a story. She'd shape metal to reflect a couple's shared interests, or engrave subtle references to family heritage. Creating jewelry wasn't just her business, it was her passion. One Wednesday afternoon, she carefully opened a teakwood box that should have contained a polished ruby for Jenny Hartford's anniversary necklace. Instead, she found a small slip of paper, folded into quarters. Confused, she picked it up. Along the top of the paper, written in neat cursive, was a cryptic message. "In midnight's mirror, twice you'll see the face that hides the guilty key." No ruby, no sign of tampering within the box, and only this strange riddle to explain its absence. Startled, Rosalind searched her entire workshop for any sign of the missing gemstone, but it was nowhere to be found. She couldn't understand how someone would manage to sneak into her meticulously organized workspace and replace the ruby with a cryptic note. Alarmed that her client's expensive gem was gone, she locked the shop early and hurried to the local police station. Officer Becky Moncrief, a friendly figure known for calming anxious residents with homemade cookies, took her statement. Although Becky promised to investigate, the note itself provided no direct clues. She suggested Rosalind check her entire inventory for more anomalies. There might be a pattern. The next morning, Rosalind arrived at the shop early, determined to comb through every drawer and gem case. At first, everything seemed normal. She breathed a sigh of relief, double-checking the sapphire intended for Mr. Alcott's retirement ring and the opal set aside for Miss Levin's vintage-inspired brooch. All were present. Then she looked for a box containing 2 flawless emeralds she'd purchased for a set of wedding earrings for a high-society client, Evelyn Ward. Only 1 emerald was in the box, along with another slip of paper. Her stomach sank even before she read the words, "The path you tread with trusting eyes leads to secrets carefully disguised." Her hands shook. Not only was she missing the 2nd emerald, but this new riddle suggested something more sinister at play. Someone was toying with her. She called Officer Moncrief again, who arrived swiftly with a clipboard, a pen, and an intent gaze. They took photos of the note and the empty box. They inspected the store for forced entry, but found no broken locks or signs of tampering. As Moncrief questioned her about employees, Rosalind had to admit she was the only one. She had no assistants. She managed details from purchasing to create clients visited by appointment, but appointments had been fairly sparse recently. She couldn't imagine a reason for any of them to sabotage her. Word spread quickly around Elmwood Crest that Rosalind Carter's precious gems were disappearing. Customers grew anxious. Some called to confirm their custom orders were still safe. Others cancelled out of fear, not wanting to invest in a project that might vanish overnight. Concern weighed heavily on Rosalind's heart. Her livelihood depended on her reputation for reliable, exquisite work. If this sabotage continued, she feared she might lose the trust of long-standing clients. She set out to solve the riddles on her own, hoping they would lead to an explanation or an identity for the culprit. She gathered both notes from her desk, placed them side by side, and studied the handwriting. It was carefully done, as though the person had practiced the letters in a calligraphic style. The riddles themselves read like puzzle pieces hinting at illusions, hidden faces, and secrets. In midnight's mirror, twice you'll see the face that hides a guilty key, read the first. The path you tread with trusting eyes leads to secrets carefully disguised, read the second. Could it be referencing an actual mirror? Did twice you'll see the face mean the same person was behind two different roles? After a troubled night of sleep, Rosaline decided to pay a visit to her closest friends and neighbors to see if they had noticed anything unusual. Her first stop was the bakery next door, run by a cheerful woman named Harriet. Harriet had a habit of noticing every passer-by through her large windows. Over yeast rolls and coffee, Rosaline discussed her concerns, but Harriet only shook her head. She hadn't seen anyone suspicious lurking around. She rarely saw more than the occasional tourist stopping in for croissant or the mail carrier dropping off parcels. Next, Rosalind walked up the street to the used bookstore, where old-fashioned lamps cast warm light on tall shelves. The owner, Mr. Bancroft, was a retired professor with a renewed passion for antiquarian tomes. He studied the notes with curiosity, gently tilting his reading glasses. "I do have a poetic ring to them," he mused. "A dash of Old English puzzle style. I wonder if the author might have drawn inspiration from certain cryptic texts." However, he had no leads on who might have done it, though from time to time he'd had customers rummaging through volumes on codes and ciphers. He promised to let Rosalind know if he recalled anything more tangible. By the time she left the bookstore, the clouds overhead had thickened. A crisp wind rustled leaves across the pavement, signaling autumn's arrival. Rosalind stuffed the riddles into her coat pocket, determined not to lose them. The puzzle nagged at her, like an unsolved design puzzle she couldn't quite piece together. She returned to the shop, only to find her phone ringing. Evelyn Ward, the wealthy client expecting emerald earrings, demanded to know if her second emerald was safe yet. Technically, it was not. With reluctance, Rosalind told her about the theft. Eveline's reaction was explosive. She threatened to cancel the order if Rosalind couldn't guarantee the gem's safety. She insisted a jeweler in the city might be more reliable. Even as Rosalind felt stung by Evelyn's attitude, she realized something odd. Only that morning the second emerald was discovered to be missing. How could Evelyn have known to call right at that moment? It could be a coincidence some clients were anxious. Still, the timing felt peculiar. She filed that thought away for later, deciding to keep all possibilities in mind. Later that afternoon, as she was about to close, her final appointment arrived. An older gentleman named Martin Fieldstone, who wanted a custom ring made with a family heirloom stone. He handed Rosalind a small velvet pouch containing a rose-cut diamond. The gem sparkled, with a faint pink radiance, stunning in its elegance. Martin explained it had been passed down for generations, and he hoped to reset it into a modern gold band for his granddaughter's upcoming graduation. Rosalind promised to keep it under tight security, given the recent thefts. Martin nodded gravely, then tucked his long coat closer around him as he exited. Watching him leave, she considered the possibility that all new clients could be suspects. After all, no one knew she possessed these gemstones except the people who commissioned the designs, or those who heard about them from gossip. She began a mental list of everyone with a motive. A competitor? A client wanting insurance fraud? Or perhaps someone trying to ruin her reputation for reasons she couldn't fathom. As evening dimmed the light, she locked the diamond in a safe in her back office, setting an alarm to notify her if the safe was opened after hours. Exhausted but resolute, she went home. That night, a third message arrived. This time slid under her cottage door in a plain white envelope. She discovered it only when she heard a rustle in the early morning. The envelope contained no gem, just another folded note. When truth meets reflection, illusions fade. Beware the fault lines of trust you've made. Alarm spiked her heart rate. This wasn't a random burglary. This was personal. If the culprit knew where she lived, locking her shop wouldn't be enough. She grabbed her coat and headed out, determined to talk with Officer Moncrief again. The sunrise cast a soft glow on the deserted streets. Becky's face grew serious when Rosalind showed her the new note. "Someone is playing a peculiar game," the officer remarked. "It's almost as if they want you to figure out who they are." She suggested checking to see if the diamond Martin left was still secure. Rosalind had a sudden urge to dash back to the shop and look. Sure enough, after unlocking the door and defusing the alarm, Rosalind opened the safe. The diamond was strangely still in its place, but placed right underneath it was a small piece of paper, identical to the others. Hands trembling, she slid the diamond aside, picked up the note, and read, "The rose's shine remains, for only half the harvest has been claimed." Panicked, she double-checked her inventory of lesser gemstones. Everything was in order, no theft. Yet this note suggested some intention to strike again soon. Seeking a fresh perspective, Rosalind confided in her old friend Layla Jacobs, a librarian who spent her days researching obscure topics and had a penchant for puzzle games. Lured by the mystery, Layla examined the riddles systematically. As she read them, she scribbled notes in a spiral-bound notebook. "Look at the references to mirrors, illusions, and trust," Layla said. "It seems the culprit is highlighting duplicity. Maybe they're mocking you, implying that someone you trust or someone who appears one way is actually another." Rosalind frowned. "I do suspect Evelyn Ward. She called me at a suspicious time. I also wonder about Martin Fieldstone, but I've seen him around town for years, and he's always been polite." "Who else could it be?" Layla asked gently. Rosalind thought about Jenny Hartford, who had commissioned the ruby. Jenny had been a reliable, kind customer for years, though. Then there was Mr. Alcott, Miss Levin, the newly engaged Tanya, and Greg, who recently visited. If she kept rehearsing names, she'd soon suspect everyone in Elmwood Crest. With a heavy sigh, she realized that might be exactly what the culprit intended, to undermine her faith in her clientele. That night, a fierce storm pounded the town with heavy rain, making the streetlights glimmer on the wet pavement. Rosalind hunkered down inside her little kitchen, sipping tea and trying to unwind from the tension. She examined the riddles again, trying to glean a pattern. Midnight's mirror, illusions, face hidden, secrets disguised, half the harvest. Reflection, illusions fade. They all pointed to something about seeing double or illusions that vanish when looked at from the right angle. She recalled a detail from the first note. "In midnight's mirror, twice you'll see the face that hides a guilty key." Maybe this referred to a person with two roles in her life, someone who acted one way by day and another by night. Or perhaps midnight's mirror referred to dark glass, onyx, or something reflective in her store. She decided she needed to check all her hidden cameras. Some months earlier, she had installed small security cameras in the corners of her workshop, mainly as a precaution. Surely if someone had snuck in, they might have appeared on the footage. She spent hours combing through videos from the past few weeks. At first, she saw only ordinary scenes, customers sitting with her to discuss designs, her own routine crafts, and the postman delivering packages. She was about to give up when she noticed something subtle in the corner of the screen at 11 p.m. 3 nights ago. A figure stood near the rear door, a hood pulled over their head. They seemed to experiment with a key or some tool. Then the footage cut out for roughly 3 minutes. When it resumed, the figure was gone. Rosalind was furious at the finding. She had no recollection of forging a new key or giving one to anyone. She shared the clip with Officer Moncrief. The police discovered no forced entry, but agreed the footage suggested a short, successful break-in. If the camera was disabled for those 3 minutes, that explained how the culprit replaced the gems with riddles. Yet the figure moved with a certain confidence, like someone who knew exactly where to stand, how to quickly disable the camera, and reassemble it on the way out. While the police processed the video, Rosalind pressed on with her daily tasks, albeit with a watchful eye. She was finishing up a pendant for Harriet's daughter when Evelyn Ward stormed into the shop unannounced. She was livid about the delay on her emerald earrings, complaining that her social event was in just a week. Rosaline tried to reassure her, but Evelyn's frustration spilled over into accusation. Then suddenly Evelyn mentioned something about Martin Fieldstone. "He told me you must be incompetent if you can't keep track of a simple emerald. He offered to show me a safer option if you fail." Rosalind was taken aback. Martin? A kindly old gentleman offering an alternative jeweler to her client? Something didn't add up, unless Martin was not as kind as he seemed. Soon after Evelyn left, Martin himself appeared, with a chipper smile, asking if there were any updates on his ring. Rosalind, unsettled, was polite but guarded. As he sat down, she noticed something. Martin wore an expensive watch that gleamed suspiciously. She recalled seeing a similar watch once on a website featuring designs by a prestigious brand in the city. He'd told her he was on a fixed income, yet the watch told a different story. Surprised, she asked if it was new. Martin claimed it was an old family heirloom, but the fleck of protective plastic on the underside of the clasp suggested otherwise. He was lying about the watch. On a hunch, Rosalind decided to follow Martin after he left the shop. The sun was dipping below the horizon, bathing the street in an orange glow. She trailed him at a distance, careful to stay hidden around corners. To her surprise, he turned into the Elmwood Crest Hotel, a newly renovated upscale establishment on the other side of town. Inside the lobby, she watched him greet a tall, stately woman. They quickly disappeared into an elevator together. Rosalind's mind reeled. Why would he be meeting someone in a fancy hotel if he was just a humble retired grandfather? She retreated, confident she might have discovered a lead. Back at home, she scrawled down her suspicions, aligning them with the riddles. Each riddle spoke of illusions, trust, and hidden truths. Perhaps Martin Fieldstone wasn't who he claimed to be. Maybe he was a con artist, someone who specialized in tricking jewelers. That night she decided to lure him out. She called him early the next morning to say she wanted to talk about his ring, hinting that she'd discovered a beautiful design from an overseas jeweler. He happily agreed to stop by that afternoon. As Martin strolled in, dapper in his coat, Rosalind greeted him warmly. She offered him tea, then pretended to fetch the ring from the back office. Instead, she quietly dialed Officer Moncrief's number. The plan was for the officer to hide nearby in case something incriminating happened. Rosalind requested that he wait in the workshop, as she wanted to show him an exciting new piece of technology used in gem authentication. While leading him to the workshop, she casually locked the front door behind them, preventing any chance of an easy escape. She then pulled out the rose-cut diamond from the safe, while keeping the note about only half the harvest has been claimed in plain view on the workbench. Martin's eyes flicked to the note, and Rosalind watched carefully. A flicker of recognition crossed his expression, replaced by an attempt at feigned indifference. He forced a polite smile. "What's that?" he asked, nodding at the paper. "Oh, it's just part of a puzzle I'm working on," Rosalind replied, watching him closely. "Someone's been leaving me these riddles. Ever heard anything about that?" Martin tried to mask his anxiety, but a bead of sweat formed at his temple. "No. That's quite odd," he managed, checking to ensure everything was in place. Rosalind sighed as if exasperated. "I wish I knew who was doing this. The missing gems are costing me a fortune, and ironically, whoever's behind it knows exactly how to get in and out undetected." She paused pointedly. "They must have done it before." Martin's mouth tightened and he gripped the arms of his chair. Just then, Officer Moncrief knocked quietly on the workshop door, making Martin jump. The tension in his posture confirmed Rosalind's suspicions. Moncrief entered, casting a polite smile. "Good afternoon," she said, surveying Martin from head to toe. "We were hoping to clarify a few points about your movements lately, Mr. Fieldstone." He swallowed hard. After a lengthy silence, he blurted, "This is nonsense. I'm just an old man with no motive." But the watch on his wrist shone under the fluorescent light, mocking his protest. "How can you accuse me of theft?" he continued, growing red. "I only came to get a ring for my granddaughter." Officer Moncrief didn't respond at first. She slid the security footage across the table, showing the unidentified figure tampering with the camera. Though the figure wore a hoodie, the build and posture matched Martin's. And from the angle of a partial reflection in a glass cabinet, it appeared the intruder had a slight limp in the left leg. Something Martin had as well, from an old sports injury. Rosalind recalled seeing him walk with a subtle gait. The evidence stacked up. Martin's voice rose in indignation, then faltered to silence. His shoulders slumped in resignation. When he finally spoke, he confessed that he was a disgruntled client who had once been scorned by a famous jeweler in the city. He'd dedicated himself to orchestrating a twisted revenge on jewelers who attained high acclaim, those perceived as arrogant to him. He found ways to infiltrate their trust, identify the most valuable gems, and remove them to ruin their businesses. The riddles, Martin said, were my way of toying with you, making you suspicious of everyone around you. I didn't expect to like you personally, but it was too late to stop. Evidently, he'd stolen the missing gems and hidden them away, leaving cryptic messages to confuse Rosalind. Officer Moncrief placed him under arrest. Search warrants produced the stolen ruby and emeralds, which he had stashed inside the hotel suite. He also turned over other stolen valuables from different towns. The sabotage inflicted on Rosalind's boutique was just one chapter of a longer story of deception. In a final ironic twist, Martin revealed that the reason he left the rose-cut diamond was to maintain a veneer of innocence. He wanted no suspicion of wrongdoing, so he entrusted her with a family-owned gem, which turned out not to be an heirloom at all, but a purchase he'd made to further disguise his scheme. In the weeks that followed, the lost gems were restored to their rightful owners, including Jenny Hartford and Evelyn Ward. Rosalind took extra security measures, updating her cameras, installing motion sensors, and changing the locks. The community rallied around her, delighted that the culprit was an outsider with a hidden agenda rather than one of their own. Evelyn, relieved to get her emerald back, apologized for her earlier outburst and retained Rosalind's services. Martin Fieldstone, it turned out, had more than one identity, forging documents across multiple states. Though shaken, Rosalind gradually relaxed into her routine again. Her workshop once more became a place of quiet creativity rather than tension and worry. She solved the final puzzle through her intuition and the help of her friends and Officer Moncrief. With the crisis behind her, trust returned, as did her loyal clientele. Around Elmwood Crest, the story was told with a hint of wonder in hushed tones. The jewelry maker who unraveled riddles to uncover a grand conspiracy against her. And late at night, when the moonlight streamed through her window, Rosalind sometimes looked at the reflective surfaces in her workshop, the polished metal, the shining gems, and felt grateful that the illusions cast by her unlikely adversary had finally vanished. Her safe was once again a dependable vault for precious stones, and the hush of her workshop brimmed not with secrets, but with the rustle of creativity. Exactly as it should be.